Yo, welcome in everyone to another Shawn and Sus fantasy football podcast where today we will be ripping a draft as well as discussing some of the latest thoughts we've had on ADP, general just draft thoughts, epiphanies and whatnot, a little George Pickens talk, and we'll go from there. Shawn, how have you been?
Good. I'm hyped for these Pacers moving the conference finals. Schedule release is tomorrow, so that's a big transition piece. This video might be out before the schedule release. We'll see, but that marks a big turning point. I think this little window gives you an opportunity to try to get some good players ahead of the schedule release. I haven't gone as far down the schedule prediction rabbit hole to try to get week 17 double game stacks, but we'll see. Perhaps we'll dive into some super degeneracy over here, but at the same time, it's still ultimately about good players. Like, as much as it is nice if you had the Dak, George Pickens, CD Lamb stack ahead of time, pre-trade and
Yeah,
stuff.
I
But
mean, some are saying there's not even a point in drafting at this point. If you didn't already have the George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson, Dak quadruple stack, triple stack, however you want to call it.
it is kind of Jover and Jaden Blue from last stream. He's going to catch some balls.
Jaden Blue steaming right up. I'm seeing him go in the 120s now, even from just a week ago. He's really steaming.
Well, 120s is crazy. That's a one. I was happy at 150, but you're just one transaction away from changing that. That's what scares me. I mean, I kind of have gone from the camp of he's underrated pre-draft to now I'm oddly becoming a hater because if he starts passing in the double digits, I might give a on-brand crash out for those who are new to me and new to us. Like, there's a crash out or three potentially on the horizon. So
stay tuned long enough. You're gonna get a crash out. You're gonna get your money's worth. Yeah, Jaden Blue in the double digits. That would be double digit like picks, like above pick 100 would be pretty wild, especially without like any real coach speak on it. Just saying like, oh, I hope he's the guy. That would be like higher than Rico Dowdle went last year when we kind of knew he was going to be the guy. And like you said, there could be some transactions incoming. However, the Jahmyr Gibbs, Devon Achane comps are already coming out, and those are obviously
that's wild.
Some very sharp comps.
I mean, if Tashard Choice is the greatest running backs coach in history, it could happen. He can catch the ball. He had huge fumbling issues, and I guess if you can catch the ball, they design routes for you, and you go down before you're hit, then fine. But that's just such a reach. Then is Rashard Smith? Who's Rashard Smith? Then he has Pat Mahomes, so he might be breaking records here. I mean, the Tashard Choice connection is interesting, but then Smith might break some fantasy calculators. Let's put it that way.
Well, I was doing a little exposure check today, and I was like, yeah, like I definitely like clicking Rashard Smith. Let's see how much I have of him and the other guys. And, sometimes you're just excited. You're going through the motions of early drafting. You're trying to get your guys sitting at 44% Rashard Smith. So we're going to need to bring that down because I'm not even that
down up to 100%. You mean
if by down I mean up, then yeah. But
if the draft capital was 4th or 5th, that is a total smash. It's just you're always scared because there's nothing on the line. Something at least if he was drafted higher, they would at least be more obligated, literally just from an ego investment standpoint. He's definitely good. He was the highest rated receiving back coming out of this loaded class, which means a lot and also says a lot about the NFL that they let him fall that far because a role player is a role player. So, but yeah, 44% of anyone is a lot.
That's a full Mostert. I measure 44% is exactly one Mostert.
We
in terms
won't
of units
measure
of measurement.
the other forms of relevant currencies that crashed out pretty hard, but most of that's actually sad. That actually legitimately annoyed me last year. I was genuinely convinced that was the right play, and the other person
Don't even need
hands
to.
off.
Not even in the player pool for a reason. Thank God.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of like seventh round pick running backs, one of my thoughts I've been having this weekend just lately that kind of informed the Brashard glaze, if you will, and Taj Brooks and Jarquez Hunter to a lesser degree. He was a fourth round pick, but all these really talented running backs that would have been like day two picks last year, like DJ Giddens would have been arguably the number one running back in the 2024 class. Probably would have gone behind Jonathan Brooks, but would have had a case. A lot of these other guys like Rashard Smith definitely would have been a third round pick or a fourth round pick, I think, last year. There's kind of a double counting that happened in the draft, whereas in past years, maybe you'd have like 10 or 12 prospects you like. This year, there were really like 20 plus running backs that you liked that most people liked. And so not only is there a greater supply where some are going to naturally just be taken later because there's only so many running back needy teams, but the phenomenon of there being so many guys. This is like the first year I can ever think of where people went into the running back draft class and were like, you can just wait till whenever and just pick from like one of five guys
Yeah,
and we'll
it
be
was
happy.
crazy. Because I think there were 5 or 6 running backs that the league loved, and they were all convinced that they would get their guys within the top, let's say 5, 6, 7. And then, like a fantasy draft in a season long or a best ball draft, when there are runs or fades at the position, the teams almost act in concert where these are good players, but because the class is so deep, they almost hurt each other in that way where I don't need to reach for running back 8 if running back 22 in the class is awesome, because I think the depth of the class is something that really, it wasn't talked about that much, but when you would go player by player, you're like, well, this guy could be like, he could start here. If he goes to the right situation, then he could be this incumbent. But then you kept saying that like again and again and again. And when you have so much depth in the class, you don't have to reach. And then that's where the draft capital pushes that back. So maybe in the future, when we factor in draft capital to these analyses, you will add class strength, but it's such a subjective thing that it's hard to incorporate. But I'm mentally pushing people up around. That's the simple way of doing it.
And you do hear when you listen to some of these teams talk, like the player personnel for the director of player personnel for the Chiefs, talking about Rashard Smith. They were shocked that he was there. The Bengals have said the same thing about Taj Brooks and other teams. The Jaguars talking about Tootin in the fourth round. The Rams talking about Jarquez Hunter. They have all
Yeah.
said that they're surprised that, but that was kind of what these sharp teams were going to do. Like, yeah, the Browns are going to take a round 2 running back and then another one in Dylan Sampson, and the Patriots are going to take one. And, some of
Yeah.
these teams were like, okay, that's why they're the Browns now. But you look at like the Bengals and, who, when their defense is right, have had success in recent years. Obviously the Chiefs, the Rams. We expect the Jaguars to be sharp. So I think like we're holding it against some of these teams that they got really fun prospects later than we would have hoped, but it's like that was part of their calculus. Like they still view these guys highly. And so I
Yeah.
kind of want to just like push back on some of the sentiment. Like some people are saying Taj Brooks is undraftable right now. You want to wait for training camp. I'm like, dude, some of these guys, like, it's not going to be like your normal 7th round or 6th round pick where like they steam up to the 16th round. Like if it turns out
No,
Taj
not at
Brooks is the
all.
RB2, he's going in the 120s.
Yeah, and this is why you would draft early, because you're trying to make bets. You can have zeros and still have a championship team or place really well or do well. And this is where you're trying to reach for an edge. And individual NFL teams can make mistakes on certain players, but it's rare for the entire league to be dramatically wrong on someone. Obviously, guys do slip and they're not perfect, but all in all, they're generally fairly good at drafting. And when you have multiple teams saying the same thing about this running back fell, because it wasn't one team that said that about one player. This is 3, 4, 5, 6 teams, and probably more, thinking the same thing and saying it out loud. So that's something notable. I do agree. Some of these late round guys, all it takes, even if you take 2 or 3 of them, if one of them hits, that's a huge boom, because they can, if you're a solidified number 2, you can be a 110, 120. I know obviously ADP isn't everything, but it's a good measuring stick, because first you want to win relative to August, then the season's the season, because that's when stuff gets really wild. But this is an opportunity to get an edge over some of these rookies, because we don't know who's going to start, and you're not going to hand the keys to a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th rounder in minicamp. That's just crazy.
And once we get into like the 130s in the draft anyway, you're talking about running backs that you're like, okay, this is the RB2. Maybe in some cases we don't also know, but we're like, okay, this is probably the RB2. If you have a pretty strong hunch that like DJ Giddens is going to be the RB2 over Khalil Herbert, because Khalil Herbert's not that good anymore, and you like DJ Giddens' prospect profile, it's not like, okay, a lot of contingent bet RBs, like when you go 0 RB, a lot of them are going to be functionally zeros or not add like really usable scores anyway. You're kind of hoping for a contingent, small part-time upside role. So at the end of the day, I don't really see what the risk is for some of these later round guys. Whereas at the running back position, I should say, whereas people are taking like Iomanor, they're taking Jalen Royals, they're taking the Jaden Higgins like at pick 100, and they're taking just all these day 2 and day 3 wide receivers that, I'm not sure the profile is that awesome to begin with, but it's much harder to carve out a role as a rookie wide receiver without that round 1 draft capital. Of course, it can happen if you really like a guy like Ladd or something, but it's like hard. And last year we saw so many zeros from these round 3 and on wide receivers. We can't be taking Elic Iomanor and Jalen Royals over like Ollie Gordon and Taj Brooks,
It's crazy. And the big reason is that as a receiver, to produce, you actually have to be good. And it's very hard to project year 1 in a position that takes longer to develop, for them to expect them to be good right away. And if you're a running back and you manage either through injury or through skill to get a role in your room, even with volume, you will at least be viable. If Jonathan Taylor is hurt and Giddens beats Khalil Herbert in the eyes of the Indianapolis Colts, Giddens will produce, unless he's very bad, which we don't have evidence to believe that. But as a receiver, if they're tasked to be the number 1 role in their offense and their team is in love with them, if the other team could defend them, then they can be an absolute zero, versus a running back, at least from the offensive line alone, you could block a not great running back for 2 to 3 yards or 4 yards minimum.
And as much as we knew it or expected to be a really good rookie running back class, we equally kind of expected it to be a weaker wide receiver class.
True.
So it's like fun to kind of just be like, oh, Elic Iomanor is going to be the wide receiver too. But they took Kymir DK over him in the 4th round anyway. And then there's the Restrepo angle. If you want to hit on our guy Restrepo real quick, I'm going to just grab my charger real quick.
Right on. So Restrepo set a bunch of records in Miami as a receiver. Miami had receivers like Michael Irvin and other notable players that really produced there. And it was strange that he wasn't drafted. He didn't get much interest, but he's managed, at least from training camp hype reports, to get some kind of noise and play, because he has the connection with Cam Ward already, which gives him a leg up on the competition. And that's someone as a late round receiver. In general, I'm trying to get my receiver depth out of the way. So the late rookie running back not only gives you the late round picks to back end fill your running back position, but then you can use the earlier picks on receivers that we trust a little more, because ultimately you have to make some kind of trade-off somewhere. So that's the bet we're making for now, and we'll see what happens. But historically, from a draft perspective, if you look at where relevant running backs or fantasy relevant running backs have come from, there's a bit more of a range of draft capital compared to wide receivers. Not every 6th round receiver is going to be like Antonio Brown, but there are tons and tons of historic running backs with late capital that have produced. And this class is much different than that in terms of depth and top of the class.
Yeah, and so when it comes down to it, I think if we're gonna go rookie anything right now, unless you have like maybe your one real favorite late round wide receiver, like for me, that would probably be Torrey Horton right now. I'll mix him in
Interesting.
sparingly. But besides that, I'm going to wait till training camp for a lot of these rookie wide receivers and just kind of see the lay of the land and see what the beat is and how they're faring. Whereas running back, we know it's a little easier to predict how their talent's going to translate to the NFL. Like we're not so surprised by um, August. Usually, like if we have something disappointing, it's like a Marshawn Lloyd injury or something like that. But
Yeah.
we kind of know at worst how it's going to shake out. Sometimes you got like a Will Shipley you're excited about, and Kenneth Gainwell, ends up taking that job. So,
Yep.
there's reason to be a little worried about an Ollie Gordon, with an Alexander Madison there, or a Taj Brooks with a Zach Moss there. But at the end of the day, those are the type of talent bets I'm willing to make because those guys could really rock it up. Whereas, what are you going to gain CLV wise with like an Io Manor or a Jalen Royals? Not much really. And B,
No,
what do you
unless
even win when you
they're
win?
amazing.
Exactly.
Unless they're amazing. And then they have to win their own depth chart. I kind of mentioned it before. You have to win your own depth chart and beat the corners on the other team.
Right.
Because a running back, you can do something. You can get checkdowns. You can find a way to at least assert yourself to relevance. And running back is much easier as a rookie to learn schematically, aside from maybe pass blocking. But generally, we've seen running backs come in the league a little bit faster.
Now, do you have any thoughts on the rookie tight ends this year? I know you like Mason Taylor as a prospect. How do you feel about the Jets landing spot? And then you also have Terrence Ferguson battling it out with Higbee. We saw a quote that, Terrence Ferguson's going to take over when Higbee retires, they say. But at the same time, things can change if he really blows them away talent wise. And then we have Elijah Arroyo out in Seattle. Any of those
Oh
three
yeah.
guys really tickle your fancy, or are you kind of holding off on them, or what?
Well, right now Mason Taylor has the route to immediate targets. I think of that group that you mentioned, Ferguson would have the biggest upside. Now, Higbee has such a long record and just trust of the organization and trust of Matt Stafford that he's going to be hard to beat. But if Terrence Ferguson was given the green light, he would absolutely eat in that offense. I think Mason Taylor is probably the safest of that, just as Justin Fields' safety valve. And barring the Jets acquiring anybody, there's really not much target competition outside of Garrett. There's Brees out of the backfield, and we'll see what happens with Lazard. I guess he might follow Aaron Rodgers. We'll see. But unless they get an Amari Cooper, a Keenan Allen, but for now, that would be the bet. But usually it's still really hard to produce that quickly as a tight end. Of course, we want to get the new Brock Bowers. We want to get the new rookie Kincaid. Had some moments when he had the room to himself, but usually tight end's pretty hard. But Mason Taylor's in a unique position. If you traded Ferguson and Taylor the teams, I think I would prefer Ferguson in that case. So I prefer the Jets spot more. I think from a talent standpoint, and the Rams really do believe in him for that's their first pick. Obviously, when Atlanta hands you a free first round pick next year and a second round, you got to just take it and figure it out from there. But whenever it's your first pick and 46 is pretty rich for a longer developing position for a contending team, shows that they really believe in him. But Higbee is that guy's been there for a while, so we'll see. But if I could see it. It's just Ferguson is the upside pick. Arroyo is still raw. I'm not as big on Arroyo, but I guess the Seahawks really love him. But that I haven't seen as much. Miami I don't know if you have different.
Seattle got Damian Martinez too. They're into those.
That's true. Damian's getting wasted over there. I know he has some off the field stuff, so we'll see what he'll do, or if my Charbonnet to the Bears prayers will be answered. But I guess at that point, in 7th round, you have to take best player available. But if the Bears took him round 4, 5, 6, the analysts would have been thrilled. But you don't know what he's like behind closed doors. Maybe there's some character would be the biggest way you would drop precipitously more than expected. Obviously, the Shador thing is more media driven. Like, I guess some of that is on him, and some of that is the coverage and the scrutiny that comes with him. So I don't think you can assign that totally to him. But
the Damian Martinez stuff is interesting because you hear off-field issues and, you start to think about the worst, but it looks like it was a DUI, which, not that I've had a DUI, I have not, but, many people have DUIs. Not the end of the world.
Especially in the NFL, there's a lot, and executives too.
Right.
Have had it.
So a lot of guys, a lot of fine folks have had DUIs in their day, and some would say that guy knows how to have a good time. Some would say that guy, he's not afraid to lay his body on the line and take risks, which you kind of want from a running back between the tackles. You don't want them to really care about what happens to them. Kind of want them.
Yeah, man. Actually, that's kind of true. If it's like more of if quarterback, you would get a lot more scrutiny. Obviously, we've seen it as well. But I guess if you're just like, hey, he's got that dog in him, in 7th round, of course, the league can handle whether there's like genuine issues of like he shouldn't be there. That's their job. But as a club, you can just say, well, he's really good. He was one of the best rated rush grade guys coming out of the class, and why not? I would have been happy for the Bears to take him, but Monangai will be interesting, but it's so hard to project. But at the same time, 7th round, Rutgers running back have done well lately in this league, at least well enough to play.
They get the job done. Yeah, I'm the pattern matching side of me would love to make that happen, but I've looked into the Monangai stuff, and I'm going to defer to the off-season coach speak and see how he does, because the tape on him, I don't know. I thought it was interesting in a bad way.
How so? I'm curious, because I'm kind of like he's strong. He has the willingness to do it, but there's kind of there isn't anything that jumps out at you. I guess being solid can get you somewhere in this league if you follow the blocks and just try to run the first guy over successfully or not. That can at least like get you somewhere, but that puts you in Roshan Johnson territory, and that's not going to win you. That's not winning you BBM. That's not winning you puppy.
No. Unfortunately, it's not. Roshan 2.7 yards per carry Johnson. That was a guy I was into 2 years ago a lot too, and it just hasn't materialized. Monangai, I didn't really see like crazy juice. He's like an average athlete for his size. There was just nothing he did. Like a lot of guys I can like point to on the tape and be like, oh, I really like what that guy does. At least with one trait, like with RJ Harvey pre-draft, my most highly drafted player pre-draft, it was like,
oh yeah, that's one of your best calls all year so far.
The glaze can go a number of ways. It can really hit or really miss. So I got to figure out how to
That's true, but
calibrate it.
that's how you stand on business. We don't want to have some. We're not acting like some kind of, not to hate on the hedge fund bros here. We
No,
love you
we
guys,
love the hedge fund bros. We're
but
looking for
you're
hedge
not
fund.
we're not
That's for sure.
managing like multi billions and trillions of assets where you if you move off a half a percentage point, the entire economy will shift. You want to have players that you stand on business on, and I do want to have a few. I know it's not super popular, but I do want to have a few genuine 0%. So, are
Yep.
there anyone you would have 0%, or anyone that's just a complete turbo fade? Because I came in with one in my pocket, but I have some fades, but I only have one that's like this super fade for me.
So as we go through the draft, I can definitely think of some. I know right now I probably have. I'll say like sometimes you accidentally time out and get a share by accident, but I would love to have 0% Pacheco.
Nice,
Um,
nice.
I'm
That's a good
low on
one.
I'm low on B Rob, but I do think I need to get it up just because I thought they would draft someone and I was wrong on that. I'm
Yeah, that's a bet on the offense. I can see that. He's middling talent, great offense.
I just
So
prefer to play through
fair.
Eckler. And I could see myself, depending on coach speak, a guy I'm really looking out for is Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt because that
He's
dude has some
interesting.
juice. He has some
He's
juice.
interesting because the prize, that's the other thing about some of these late round rookies is the potential prize is huge. If Jarquez rises up LA, that's a huge prize, league winning, uh, big puppy winning, like type of prize. Same with Taj. Same same in these other scenarios. I think Giddens is really high upside. Krosky Merritt, same thing. Because these are in good offenses too. So that's something
Exactly.
also to keep in mind.
Exactly. And the someone could nitpick where I'm like, well, I'm into Corey Krosky Merritt, but I'm not taking him, but I am Burchard. They're both seventh rounders. Like, what's the difference for me having 44% of one, which I admit I should get down, versus zero of another right now? And it's when there's like two solid veteran backs on the team already, which I believe the Commanders have with B Rob. He's solid. Eckler is solid in his role. If you put a gun to my head and truth serum me and made me answer how many good running backs are on the Chiefs right now outside of Brashard Smith, I would say zero. They don't have one.
Yeah, I was looking it up. Eli Mitchell was really good in 2021.
And
So
when he was healthy,
Eli
if he can
Mitchell
be
was
healthy,
good healthy, but that's the thing is for these third, fourth round initial stream guys to make it, there has to be some degree of injury luck, or it's just a big issue of juice, or they're just simply better. And Brashard is a very clear role. He was the number one rated by PFF graded. Obviously, isn't the gospel, but it's definitely indicative. He, I believe, from memory, was rated about 90 PFF receiving grade in college, and second place was 79 in the
jeez,
entire class. Think
gapping.
about like Travion, Genty,
Right.
and that's for last year. But just because he's a former receiver too, he has a very clear path to playing time. There's a P Ryan role that is right ready for him to take.
All he has to
It's
do,
up to him to take it. So
all he has to do is pass block, like to guarantee that he gets on the field.
yes,
If he can be a competent pass blocker, he will play football starting in week one. It might only be a couple snaps early. I wouldn't be building out super fragile builds that rely on early season Brashard Smith points. But if you can afford it late, on teams where they don't have anybody, and some people will say, well, Pacheco's a guy. I don't think Pacheco's a guy necessarily after he snapped his leg. He never really had long speed. He has nothing in the passing game. He was like a between the tackles grinder who like lost a little bit of strength and confidence in that leg. Like
yeah,
they're not beholden to him. Like teams like move on from these guys all the time, and we don't see it coming. But it's like, yeah, it happens. Like teams move on from. Who's the Jaguars guy? Was it James Robinson?
yeah. Late
He
rounds they don't have the loyalty. because there isn't any team investment behind that. Pacheco was still a 7th-round pick. His career high in carries was, I believe, 205 or 206. So he's never really shouldered the load like that. He can catch the ball. There's a difference between you throw the pass, he'll catch the ball, and he'll catch it and go upfield, run real routes, and make something happen. And you're happy with them in that role. And the Chiefs have the precedence of Jerick McKinnon, who was a very athletic receiving specialist back. And Brashard has the same narrative going. And because of his draft capital, you get scared away, but it's a really good fit for them and a good fit for him. So and no one else on that team can receive like he can. Pacheco can run hard between the tackles, but there's a lot of guys that can fight over that spot. And Pacheco's at RB, 30, 31? And Brashard is where, in the 55, 60s, if I'm not mistaken?
Crazy, like 200 something overall. It's crazy.
So at that price, I mean, you could get B-Rob, Aaron Jones, those and the other talents around the same range, because Pacheco's, I think, about 90, 91.
Like the Chiefs, they have like an exceptionally high pass rate, like in the red zone. Like we're going to have Mahomes like throw it, like they do all types of crazy stuff down there, all types of trick plays. They're like, we're just going to let Mahomes make a play. I don't know if Kareem Hunt last year had a single multi-touchdown game. I could look that up, but it's like
rushing.
What do you really
I think
win?
He might have, but
let me take a quick look. But it's like with Pacheco, if he's not going to really catch passes like that, and maybe like an Eli Mitchell or a Kareem Hunt siphon off some rushes as well, then it's like, what do you even win with Pacheco? Even if he is the lead back, like he gives you 14 carries for 49 yards, and man, you take your
it's not going to win you
points.
Anything, especially at RB30. And in his so he's been, I think, RB3. He was an RB2 one year, not as role, not overall. So he's about RB30 in the 30s. Then his peak year, he was RB 16, 17, 18, around there. And he caught 44 passes in that peak year. And there was really no one else on the team catching passes at that point. Jerick, I believe, was before that. And he was a playoff hero at one point. So that receiving role, and that's assuming he gets no rushing. That's a very conservative viewpoint. And the best Pacheco season was about 205 carries, 930 yards, 35 yards. And he's going to lose receiving work. And Kareem Hunt is there, and Eli Mitchell is there. So it looks like a very noisy room, and they could easily, the acquisition market isn't done. And there's the chance they trade for a receiving back. Why? It just doesn't make sense. But a rush, there are more rushers, a Dobbins, a Chubb on the market. There aren't really, off the top of my head, there aren't any receiving only guys that are being discussed.
Right. They could be an ETN team, Kenneth Walker. I think Kenneth Walker's going to stay, but a Charbs team.
I think so too.
Even if they don't ultimately make a move and they ride with Pacheco for a bit, I don't think it's a fantasy profile that kills you. And because I think functionally you snap your leg and you're not that great to begin with, it gets a little tough to really pay off. So with that said, do you want to hop into one of these puppy drafts and maybe cover some thoughts on George Pickens as we do that?
Yes, sounds good. Yeah, so I guess I can start on the Pickens deal. I'm really excited. I think this is really a best case scenario for Pickens from both a character standpoint and a team standpoint, because you have an established pocket passer, you have a clear number one receiver, because Pickens is, from a talent standpoint, maybe top 25 to 30. That would be a fun ranking, but around there. But as a 2, you're very happy with him, and he won't have any conflicts not being the number one guy, because you're behind CeeDee Lamb. He's literally one of the best receivers in football, top 3 or 4, probably top 3. I saw Puka was at 4. I'm like, he's definitely a tier above that. So
That filled pretty quick, by the way. And
yeah,
for some
wow.
reason, they only
Wait,
had
3.
30-second drafts. So
That's totally fine. And actually, for recording, I think at 30 is actually ideal.
that is optimal. Yeah. Let me
So
pull.
I like it for Dak. Dak has been up and down. In his career, he's been like he's had 2 years with 38 and 11 picks, 39 and 11 picks. Dak was rated one of the best passers on throws 20 yards and deep as a quarterback, but he didn't have enough attempts because CD more wins in the short and intermediate range, and they haven't had the deep threat when they had Amari Cooper. So Pickens is one of the best deep receivers. I believe he was receiver 3 or 4 on deep targets with Russell Wilson last year. So it's a perfect. I think we're up.
We are on the clock here. We have Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, CeeDee Lamb. Any way you want to go?
Any of those three. I maybe Saquon or Lamb.
Let's try Saquon.
Yeah, we haven't done an RB first team yet together, and Saquon's going to be amazing. The line is rated. I'll double check it, but the line is still supposed to be one of the best rated by Mike Clay. Literally number one. There's the only one with a 10 out of 10 score. So he's going to be
We'll take
awesome.
that.
We'll see if Jalen Hurts touchdown robs as much, but I think they wanted to get it to Barkley more, but he had a few stuffs at the goal line. So I think he still has upside to produce. So do you have anything on Saquon other than
I
Glaze?
just pray he stays healthy. And if he does, I see no reason we don't get another at least 1,900 yards from scrimmage, which would be a regression from last year and still a smash. That's,
Right
with a
on.
couple less 60-yard touchdowns and a couple more Will Shipley touches to keep him fresh. I think he's still arguably the 101, but I just take Jamar Chase when I get the first pick, so I don't end up with 0% Jamar Chase. But if
Yeah, that
I
makes
was ranked,
sense.
if I was setting the market, I'd probably have Saquon 101, even accounting for some age and injury stuff, just because I think he can. He showed he can smash in remarkable ways, and I was discussing this week earlier with someone, and someone was saying, "Oh, well, Saquon didn't even do much in the playoffs," and it's like we got so used to like Saquon 40 burgers that when he doesn't have 40, it's like oh he disappointed. He was like the RB2 overall in week 16 and the RB4 overall in week 17, so he still had it down the stretch for sure.
Yeah, and didn't he have a big week against the Rams? Was the closest game they had, and from memory we can look that up. I think he was the reason they won. He had a few.
Yeah.
He really tore up the Rams last year. Something. Maybe it's just a scheme standpoint. That's something to deep dive into. But he was the reason they won, and that was the closest game they had. That was the
So
one that it was down to the wire. They were within 25 yards of overtime. So. And you're going, would you go receiver here, double hero?
I don't hate Saquon and either JT or Bucky. Uh,
Oh,
do
JT.
you do you want to try one of those guys?
Yeah, we can do it. Double. Let's do a double hero to be different.
Are you a JT guy?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
I'm slight. And when I say like I'm not a hater, I'm slightly
What?
nervous about
Watch
Bucky.
it. You watch it.
Partially Liam Cohen reasons. Partially that sometimes when it sounds ridiculous, but sometimes when you're too efficient as a running back, even if you go down slightly to normal, because you're taking him potentially there at 22, if he's producing 35, you're nitpicking like crazy at this level. But between Jonathan Taylor, who's been an RB1 overall, and I've heard different arguments. Would you take Giddens later as a backup, as a clear backup, or
I would
is
not.
it not on this? You don't like double dipping the same offense?
Not unless there's like a real actual injury going in
Oh, a
and like I'm
preseason
getting a
injury. Okay.
discount. Like if I got Jonathan Taylor at like let's say he like hurt his hamstring, God forbid, knock on wood, and you had Jonathan Taylor in like the 40s or 50s. then I would take Giddens to like help me get there. But
Oh,
otherwise,
I get
no.
it. So it's more of a hedging a lower overall ADP and investment, because that's something that, as I've deep dived into putting strategies together, which how do you build a roster around the running backs? Do you try to get multiple offenses, or if there's a clear backup, do you take that person and secure that backfield, or get
Yeah.
multiple areas? So you would have to go receiver here, or
Or
triple heroes wild. Have you done a lot of those teams?
I
And just
usually don't
smash
get
receiver like 6 picks straight? I
just
mean, you
go six
could.
straight. I th- I think it would be a fun thought experiment. I think Bucky is a top 5 running back this year.
Wow.
And
We could roll with him or Tyreek in this group. I'm
$5
fine with it.
drafts.
I'm
I'll
fine with it. Yeah, let's
trust the
we
process
got
because
it for the
now
content, and overall I'm fine at 27, but
when you
I'm a
get
little worried about
into
him.
when you get so I my ranking on Bucky before everyone started setting rankings was like 15 overall.
Wow.
Eh, He was a part-time player for a good part of the start of last year. Still ended up with 1,500 scrimmage yards. And on tape, I wanted to be a hater because I was a Rashad White glazer. Shameful to admit. Not that I
Great
thought
receiving
Rashad
back
White
though.
exactly because he's such an elite receiving back, and I thought he would like improve between the tackles. Because the problem with Rashad White is he just like way too patient, and he's not like Le'Veon Bell like level explosive once he gets the ball. There's something his instincts are so good in the pass game, but just between the tackles, I don't know. He gets scared or something. I don't know what it is, but
Yeah, and there's some home run hitting too. He's
yeah,
kind of looking for the home run, and then that annoys the crap out of coaches. So because they'll
but
have a few nice rushes a game, and they're like, oh my gosh, he's that
but
guy. But
Bucky goes full speed like through the line, and like once I started seeing him play, like I saw him play his first game ever, saw him play like their third home game, I guess, against the Eagles, and I was like, I'm in trouble with my Rashad White bags because the dude goes full
yeah,
speed and his like lateral agility and like bag of like moves to make people miss is so impressive that like that's like what drew me to RJ Hart. I'm like, who can like run full speed at a defender and make them miss without like having to like
yeah,
slow down and decelerate to like let the defenders close. Like he's still running at you full speed and he's going to put that move on you and get by you.
yeah.
And
And
that's
he
what
is
Bucky is
creative.
good
I
for.
will I will give him that. And now I'm looking up some of their offensive line stats. So PFF had the Bucks rated as the 18th best run blocking line, and Mike Clay has them as tied for eighth with 7, 8 other teams. So there could be some blocking improvement there, which he doesn't have to be as creative. So I'm actually warming up to him a little bit. It wasn't like a hard fade. I was between him and Taylor. That was the reasoning, was at his body size, like can he handle it? But there are way worse situations, and you have the Bucks mostly intact, other than the coaching. And from a running back standpoint, that's probably the least dictated, maybe besides a true X receiver, because I still like Evans.
For sure. Do you have a wide receiver name here that you really like? Devontae Smith, DK Metcalf, Zay Flowers, Cortland Sutton, Jamison Williams got some crazy coach speak today. He could be
I love.
maybe a around 5 target,
I hope they don't
or
take
unless
it.
you want to pull him.
Devontae. What about Devontae Smith? I just love him.
That would be my favorite name. The only thing is we
Yeah.
also have Saquon already, but I'm down for it.
Is
Just
that a bad
bet on the.
thing, or
I don't think it's a terrible thing.
what about hit Hurts on the back end?
That
Like
would
the
be interesting. We just might
will he
get
make
really
it?
buried at quarterback. That'd be. Do you want to do Devontae and just kind of see what happens?
Yeah.
One of the things I realized this week, the Goff and the Purdy prices are like astoundingly cheap and keep getting cheaper, and I don't get it because they're like two of the best.
Yeah, Purdy especially. I think it's insane.
Like when I took Bucky and I started thinking through like what can we do at the next turn, not this one, but the one after. You have Jennings there who's getting glaze from their coaching staff. You're getting Pearsall glaze from Matt Harmon who does the reception perception stuff, saying he
Oh,
like
I see, I
looks
did see that because his prospect production was a little iffy, but that really helps. NFL production is a lot more predictive than college, so that was huge. So shout out to Matt
Please,
Harmon on that.
please let JMO fall. You want to do JMO? He got some crazy glaze from their coach
Really,
today.
you wouldn't go Jalen Hurts triple stack and just fly Eagles fly to the
I would,
bone here?
if we had two wide receivers, I would.
Oh, because AJ's gone, and then what could you do? Goddard. Either
What
one.
if we
Like you
do
could
JMO stacked, Ridley stacked, Pickens stacked?
Pickens too. That would be sweet. I think Pickens is going to eat. So you're really in JMO, okay?
So
So what's the news with
Pan-
JMO? I'm out of the loop on this one.
the glaze today was I'm going to move JMO in my personal ranks up into the 30s.
30s.
They
Okay. Go on. Let them cook. Let's.
Well, he was an elite prospect, I thought, coming out. Very raw though, but
True.
like he was like a top 10 pick. Had so many weird things happen where the first 2 years he did nothing. Then last year he missed 2 games, still had 1,075 yards, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. No, it's not going to pull up, but he had over 1,000 yards last year. And they said he's like made multiple leaps and bounds in terms of like his route running. And their new OC, John Morton, basically said, yeah, like I made a list of like things I want him to like improve on this offseason. And he came in with like the best work ethic he's ever had. And he's done everything I asked of him and more. And I see it like total breakout for him this year.
Wow.
Like he any glaze he could have thrown his way. And it's like, dude, if like JMO like goes from like the guy he was last year and like made multiple leaps on top of it, like he might be the Lions wide receiver 1. He has that in his range of outcomes.
There were this does sound ridiculous, but there were flashes where you almost thought that he was the better receiver between him and Brown. There were times where you almost felt like a takeover was happening. So he's 24 years old. Last year he had 1,001 receiving yards and 11 starts and 61 on the ground. So that's quite a lot in the age 24 season.
And this is his contract year, right?
That sounds right.
This is his 4th year. I'm not sure if they picked up his option or not, but like you get a guy who's like a top 10 pick who like it's just weird stuff was happening. And now it's all coming together, like contract year stuff. Like he might go for 1,300.
He is built for this format and too, because he can have 300 yards in a game at any point. And
he stacks with Goff, who's going in like the 120s now in a lot of drafts, which is insane.
Yeah, that's look, I like Ben Johnson. As a Bears fan, I like Ben Johnson as much as the next guy, but at some point that the talent is pretty good too.
What do you want to do? Sorry. Yeah. I was just wondering what you want to do here, just so I can cue it up.
I don't love Olave here. Is it too far for Diggs, or is that too much of a reach? Because
No, I think that's cool.
I really liked Diggs of that group. What about what's happening at tight end? Too early? Is anyone there?
There's just not really any names yet.
No, it's too early.
How would you feel about a Diggs and then try to see if Rizzy comes back on the other side because he's getting some glaze too?
So you want to go Purdy double stack? I can see that. Or
you want to do Diggs
Godwin's gone. Yeah, that's let's do Diggs here. I just think he's the best player overall. You're paying the man $23 million a year for 4 years, and this is a crazy fun fact that I'm looking up. Jameson Williams, his cousin is apparently Kyron Williams. That's what Pro Football Reference is saying, which is
I didn't know
interesting. I did not know that. That just really caught my attention. So football family going on. So
they be balling.
I understand the upside case with he could be the guy to lead. He could easily lead the league in receiving when it counts. That's the upside, and he has enough pedigree now. Of course, it's only one season, and he's still 24.
You want to do Rizzy?
I think that's the right.
I think we caught up well at receiver, dude.
Yeah, because Connor would be like the better player, but we have 3 elite guys. You because you have to build a team. You can't just have
Where you're
BPA.
basically just saying Connor's like going to be on the bench like a lot of weeks. Like
Yeah,
my thing
unfortunately.
is like drafting like you're right. And if Saquon, JT, and Bucky hit, you're going to have like weeks where they combine for, I mean, I was going to say 80. You're going to have weeks where they're combined for over 80. And like my target like points for like a week 15, week 16 is like 160 at least. So if they're hitting like you hope, you're getting halfway there with your two running backs and flex. And then can you make up 80 at quarterback, three wide receivers, and a tight end? Absolutely, with this group so far.
Yeah, and it'll be whether we can get our guys at quarterback, which we should be able to. Is that what you're targeting next, or
I think so. With the ADPs now, Purdy and Goff keep falling. Um, and they like fall beyond these numbers. We also have Drake May now for Diggs.
Oh, that's
I
true. Yeah, because you have to stack them. I was gonna say Dak's price is also kind of quarterback is pretty deep.
yeah.
I think some of that second tier of the 8 to 10 range, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 is a little bit rich. And because Dak has been QB5 before. Obviously, we didn't pick Pickens. There's you have to build the team out, but yeah, I mean, you could go 2, or I get they're too early to go 3 guys there. We still maybe need a few receivers, tight end.
We could see what falls back to us at 94. Maybe you get something interesting
Yeah.
you don't expect at running back or tight end, like if Hawkinson's there, if Aaron
Yeah,
Jones,
that's what I was thinking
like
about
Caleb
too. But
Johnson fell earlier tonight a bit. I don't know why. So weird stuff happens, and you kind of just say,
yeah,
"Oh, I could like get a value and get a unique combination." Interesting.
that's true. I love Aaron Jones at his price. By the way, that was one of the players I was looking at before we started, and Mike Clay has the Vikings as the tied for the second best O line group in the league right
Wow.
now. And last year, let's look at their run block. They were 16th in run block, which is league average. From a grade, obviously PFF is an indicator. It's not exact, but when he was in Green Bay, he's been a top 10, at least in the PPR scoring. Top 10, he's been top 10 4 times. And that's when the Packers had top 10 offensive line units. And then his efficiency would go down with the offensive line because he's not a big guy. He kind of has to read the blocks and run through the hole and as fast as he can. And he's not going to get yards after contact as much.
Right. He's
But
getting up there a little bit in
yeah,
age.
yeah. He did have his career high also in rushing yards and attempts, which is unexpected. And he got it. Well, he just went, but he got 2 years, 20 million. So that's someone I'm pretty excited about. But 2 of my guys just went there. So we'll have to build out our.
And the nice thing is we don't have to really pounce on anything at running back for a little bit unless it's really nice.
Yeah, that's
We
true.
we
Because,
kind of boxed out 2 other teams of an elite running back that they probably would have gotten. So now you're going to have other teams needing to get 6 or 7 running backs probably.
yeah, those are
And
ones 2, 3 months down the line are going to be like, wow, how did I get this team? Like,
right. And this is
especially
a
once
team that people would hate to face in a playoff pod.
oh, yeah. Because they're such high upside. Devontae can go off anytime as well.
Any of these
Not
do
Jaden
we,
Higgins.
do we do a Josh Downs talent bet and then we got the Saquon Devontae thing going, get a JT, like if you have a down JT week, you get it through Downs and the other 2
Downs.
running backs pick it
Do
up.
you like Downs or Pittman more? Do you have a
Whichever you
preference?
I prefer Downs, but I could go either way. Do you prefer one over the other?
We could do Downs because he's going to be gone, and then we can try. Is it too much to go 2 Colts?
Um it's interesting with having JT already. I would just see if there's let me bring the quarterbacks into the fray as well. Do you want
Yeah,
to
we're still a ways. Or
We could.
do you want to not risk Purdy? I mean, I'm okay with that.
I'd be down pulling up Purdy, even though it's about a round. I kind of just don't care to lock it up. I guess the question would be: do you want to do a two quarterback build or get all three of our stacks with Purdy, Goff, and
We want at
May?
least two, I guess, because Pearsall isn't our main guy. We don't have to get him. I think Goff is crucial for this build because Goff really is streaky.
Let me see who the Amon Ra team has, or who that is, and who they have at quarterback. Meek. He's got Jalen Hurts.
Oh yeah,
He's
so I
probably
think
gonna
we're
go.
pretty comfortable. Oh, that's a weird build. Okay.
Do you want to try Purdy, or do you want to just lock up Goff and try to push Purdy?
I would say lock up Goff, although we can do best player available. See if there's anybody else you really love.
The thing is, the board's kind of wiped, and we could like probably
Yeah,
push some of
I'm
these
fine
tight
with
ends.
Goff unless you love one of these tight ends. There's a few
Kelsey
options.
is cooked, in my opinion.
He's really a touchdown bet. When you have these late tight ends, it's amazing what he's doing at his age as a real life NFL player. But I can't see the volume. I think they want to spread the ball around in general. There's a lot of mouths to feed. I'm very pro Rashi. If you saw our other stream, we took Rashi pretty high, and then lo and behold, actually Rashi's ADP was, I think he was about 36, 37 when we took him. We took him about 31, 32, and I've seen him well in the 20s, at least from people's teams or what I've seen the trends at. So I'd really Rashi from that group. Let's check his ADP and see if it's had any major movement, because we've seen Pickens went up 2 rounds.
Sorry, you were saying Rashi's ADP?
Yeah, Rashi to see if.
Sorry, I was just cutting in and out a little bit. Yo.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We're back and better than ever.
Oh, phew.
Rashi has moved up. He's moved up from 38 ADP opening day, I believe, to 29. So he's
nice.
steaming.
Yeah, so we got him around a good price.
We'll take that. So Purdy goes. It's all good. We will have our eyes on Drake May when he comes back around. I guess it would have been interesting to try to push Goff, but like you said, we need him more, especially with the caliber of the bet we're making on JMO, like him really being a smash. I like going Goff there and just locking it up.
Yeah, I think Goff is the most crucial because Pierce, at least from watching the Lions, Pearsall can still do well without Purdy being a smash, but Goff really goes. If Goff is in rhythm, he can be one of the best quarterbacks in the game. But when Goff is out of rhythm, he can be absolute trash. So that really fares well for our interests, especially if we're doing a multi-quarterback where we're taking guys in this range and later on where we have 2-3 stacks.
And we
because
built
Purdy
this
can
team,
still be good and spread it to Kittle, spread it to other guys. But
we built this team on the leverage. Like I like, taking a chance somewhere, like if you're going super elite running back, like just mega running back, what's like the leverage bet we made? That's like an 80th, 90th percentile outcome. It's that JMO is like a dog this year. And when those like leverage bets hit where you make the rest of the roster built around it in a way that it all makes sense, and you're like, I just need this one little thing to hit. Where like last year for me, I had a lot of Jalen McMillan teams where I would go heavier at running back and tight end and quarterback. I'm like, if Jalen McMillan can just be that guy down the stretch, and he was, so it can hit nicely.
absolutely.
I don't want to like have too many far fetch stories, but it's nice to have one on a team,
a few high leverage. So, Toon is screaming right there. But is there anyone else? We already have a.
I just worry that these two teams behind us both don't have quarterbacks. They might take
Yeah,
the
that's
day.
true.
I think we
Yeah.
lock it up with
Tootin,
Diggs.
Tootin can make it back. Yeah, that's just as a BPA because we have three really good running backs. You could
Yeah.
sit almost the whole draft, but that I just saw Tootin. I'm like, my eyes just got wide. But I
I
really think he's going to be the guy over there. And uh, just on your last point on the higher leverage bets, does that change that we're in a puppy versus BBM, or would you go even harder in a BBM? Does that change your strategy, or is it just the
I'll
pools are
get a
so
li-
big you got to just go for it
I'll
no
get
matter what?
they are like similar in scale. I will go a little crazier in the puppies just because it's a cheaper dollar amount. The one thing I would propose as an alternative to running back is Bateman get a little
Oh,
capture
Bateman's pretty good.
some touchdown equity on Baltimore. Whereas like I love Tootin, but
We
he
do
might
have
not
three
hit our
guys.
lineup
It's a total different
where we
ball
could
game. Yeah,
really push it and just like we might need Bateman's points more. Do you have
I'm cool with Bateman. That's fine
okay.
because of the roster, and that's the nice thing about taking two or three studs early is you're chilling. You're not going to have a ton of down weeks. Maybe a fourth by next few picks to just because you have like down weeks just as an advance side of things, but it doesn't have to be something super urgent. Like it would be sick to get.
Like a Ramondre, a Jaden
Yeah,
Blue, like any of these names like stand out to you? Ray Davis is interesting, I think, low key with the James Cook stuff, and he's just kind
yeah.
of good.
It's a great offense, and being when you look deep into the data, like being in Buffalo is just awesome. Any of anything where you're running back in Buffalo, you have so much opportunity. One of the best lines. Josh Allen is a absolute wonder of a player. Bills rated one of the above average offensive line by Mike Clay. So that's a pretty good one. If do we don't have tight ends yet, do we? Is there anybody?
I think we're coming up on a nice little pocket. I'm kind of in my mind just saying Hunter Henry's one of our tight ends later just to have it stacked up. I could definitely see so thinking through the structure of this team, like what we're going to be doing. I'm thinking this is probably a 3 tight end team. Does that
Three late guys type of
or
deal.
maybe 1 now and then 2 later, like if we get an Njoku faller, a Craft faller. How do you feel about Njoku and Craft?
Njoku's the talent. You're just worried about the team. If it's Flacco, it's wheels up. Uh, it would Kraft. I'm just the. It feels like there's so many mouths to feed, but he does have spike weeks, and he's really good as a yak player. But it without the Jordan Love stack that we had last time, I'm not as motivated between those guys. I'm just I'm just not a huge into Kincaid.
Kincaid is so brutal.
I don't know if it's prospect fatigue or what, but I'm just really or like young player fatigue, whatever it is. I'm really just burned out with him. With Dawson Knox still being there. I know I said be in Buffalo like 10 seconds ago, but tight end is different. Running back, so much is the offense you're in.
Yeah.
It's huge. You can't outcatch a quarterback. You can't throw. You can't outrun a line that can't block. But if you have those and you're decent, you have a chance. Oh, we're
The
getting okay. Oh, Goddard is
Goddard is
in.
fun if we have Jalen Hurts, but it would be overkill to have 3 Eagles without Jalen Hurts, I feel like, because it's like, all right, now we've really bet that they're going to score like 45 points in week 17 and we don't have them.
That makes
But
sense. So you're very into. I'm feeling the same way. It sounds like you're very into the later quarterbacks, relatively speaking, because we did have the chance with Hurts, but it is an expensive stack, and
like
if
the
the Eagles just
2v2,
don't go crazy, and Jalen's a rushing quarterback too, that's also part of the analysis.
like the 2v2 would have been Jalen Hurts and then what wide receiver went there at 99? Like Jalen Hurts and Jaden Higgins or
you've
or
convinced
JMO
me already.
or JMO and Goff. If JMO's
Yeah. That's I understand. And then because Hurts is a running quarterback, his rushing doesn't help anybody. In fact, it hurts Saquon Barkley. So if he was a pure yards guy and he wasn't running that much, then the stack is very necessary. Oh,
please
we're
give
one
us
pick
intro
away.
Cooper.
Yeah, that's
Please give us the
I
intro. Yo,
at that price is crazy.
that's a
142 is crazy.
that fell right into our lap. Is there
Yeah.
anything
That's
we'd be missing that like we can't
no.
live without? I think we
We're
just
in
do
6
that right.
picks, aren't we? So it's fine. You
Let's do
got
it.
to take talent. He's going to be gone. And 2 tight ends literally just went. So because as we kind of talked about, like when you see the positions go, you start freaking out. Look, likely he just went.
Yep, Pitts might
So
go.
he's 24.
He is. Oh, he's gonna definitely take Pitts at 145 here. He has to with the Penix with penis.
Yeah. Yeah, you can say that in YouTube, right?
Yeah,
That,
Michael Penix.
yeah.
Michael Penix. Yeah.
It's not even if it is, it's science. It's not, we're not offending anybody here.
No, that's literally just his name, and who could be mad at that? All right.
Garendo's so interesting.
You want to
Are
do
you pro
Garendo?
Jordan James? Rico's pretty interesting too. Do you like Rico?
We could probably push Rico to the next one if we wanted to.
Okay, that's
Any of
fine.
these receivers, or are you a Garendo guy?
Any of the receivers really stand out.
You can do Garendo.
McMillan, yeah, I just like Garendo when he had the chance, smashed, and you're one Christian McCaffrey injury away, and
Yeah,
Shanahan backs have done it before. Now, I do like Jordan James, so
but
that's
he's a
the
rookie.
only it's the only hesitation I have with the analysis, because if you watch, we can't put it because there are like legal things with tape and we're figuring it out, but if you look at Garendo's highlights, you're just like, wow. I do like Braylon too, but when you get to these backups, you're just shooting for upside, and we have 3 established guys, and I didn't feel super strongly about any of these receivers. McMillan pre-Igbuka, I would have. Tillman's interesting, but he could fall. We have
Jalen
2.
McMillan's ADP, bro, in the pre-draft stuff, I have 0% McMillan. I think I accidentally
Yeah.
got one share when I was trying to do like the 10 little boards at once or whatever, but
Oh, that would have been such a fun stream. But how can he even talk? You're just like,
it was just me going,
yeah,
just crashing out the whole time,
oh,
just
I wish you would have
questioning it all.
recorded. I wish you would have recorded that. Then you could put it up like 3-4x speed, and then you just really freak people out, and then people get they know that they know someone's not playing around. It's like you see some people doing some wild stuff. You see the workouts or anything. When it stands out visually, you start getting intimidated, and then they let players like Njoku fall to us at 142 somehow.
Is this an Anthony Richardson team if he falls?
As QB3, I'm cool with it. I actually think he's pretty good for fantasy. That,
or is it a round 18 Daniel Jones team?
As I have called in past things, the impoverished stack, and maybe you get. I would say that. Do you feel strongly about Dobbs? I don't know. I just think they'll just rotate every week. It's going to be a new guy. I feel like
I'm worried about him because he had that. You want to talk about a good crash out? He had that weird ass crash out in the middle of last year. You remember that?
That's right. I didn't even remember that.
And then they brought it, and then he had like 2 bad concussions after that. It's giving me a little bit of CTE vibes, and it's kind of scaring me. Oh, Hunter Henry for our May stack.
Yeah.
Lock that up and see what comes to us.
Yeah.
I'm thinking
young quarterback loves a good tight end. I believe we could look into that, but I believe they had a good run together when it was Drake May's limited starts. I think they had a pretty good run. I could look it up. I don't want to risk the internet cutting out, but
I feel you.
I
No,
could use that.
674 yards last year is actually pretty solid for a tight end when you like compare it to like the other guys going around him. Like Ertz had, okay, it's about on par. It's about on par for the range. So, but yeah, he had a fine year. And when you get the May spike, like if May throws for 3 touchdowns, you feel like decent that like one could go to Diggs and one's going to Henry. Like you're capturing that.
Do you know roughly around when May started? I could look it up, but so
Was it like
uh,
week 5, maybe? Okay, so we're on the clock. Any of these wide receivers? Do we go back to the Dusty Keenan Allen well? These running backs are so bad.
yeah, do you just slide Cooper in there just as an upside?
The last thing I would say is, do you want to go Mason Taylor as tight end 3?
I'm cool with that. I love Mason Taylor. I would say Cooper on our next, just as we've said it every stream. Maybe we'll make it. I'm just gonna keep crashing out about it because why is he still on the board? Like
Yeah, what's happening, bro? He keeps
50,
falling. So now I don't even try it in round 16 because look
50,
where he's
50,
at.
he's like, you're drafting him like 110, 50,
Bro,
50 shot easily.
he's almost
It's
going
not hard.
undrafted now. He's behind Tutu Atwell. He's behind Isaac Tesla.
That's crazy. I'm
He's
gonna.
behind Wicks.
The CSC now might. It has to be a tradition. That's gonna become like our meme is just when Cooper hits 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns, and the entire league, just like the entire community, just gets that one wrong.
I am starting to get a little worried. There is something like you have to have the diamond hands, of like, I believe, but the price does keep going down and he doesn't have a job. So, but I still believe, but it is like,
At that upside, who are you getting? The
right.
DeAndre Hopkins, a Baltimore resurrection.
At pick like 210, it's like, does he sign? And it's like, yeah, he's going to sign. But I did have a bunch of Will Fuller the year he went ghost and never came back. So I don't know. I kind of like that Alec Pierce is also falling. Did you say before you were not an Alec Pierce guy?
For spike weeks, so we have 2 quarter. I would go Richardson just because of the rushing, and we have a couple guys. Then if Pierce falls, I don't know if you feel differently, but between those, so I'll just read Hunter's yards with Drake May, and keep in mind this is a rookie midseason: 41, 92, 45, 56, 14, 63, 44, 75, 25, 39.
Yeah.
In what 170s, and that's a year 2 development. He obviously likes him, and Diggs will take some of that. But if you're even any bit a believer in Drake May, Pierce is already gone. Dang.
I mean, along our Amari Cooper line, Keenan Allen was the wide receiver 9 last year, weeks 12 to 17. He has even more. He showed even more in the tank.
That's true. Or do you want to just to double free agent it and just upside? I mean, it's late. You can kind of just swing. I like our build unless you feel differently, or Richardson.
I think we need to arrive at 8 wide receivers somehow.
Okay, I'm fine. Keenan Cooper we could pull off, unless you feel differently.
I like Keenan a good bit over these guys. Like, again, like top 10 receiver down the stretch, even in a dysfunctional. It's the same logic, exactly. And the league seems to feel better, I think, in my reading the tea leaves about Keenan Allen, because he showed more down the stretch. And it's like he could go so many places and
177 ADP. Keenan also, I don't have any record of Keenan ever having a character concern. Maybe that's what's holding back Cooper. Will Shipley's another backup, but he just went.
A-Rich goes. Do you have a running back target here? Hunter?
I feel like we talk so much about Burchard, it would be kind of off-brand to not take him. But unless you think you have too much. Unless you think you have too much. But
well, we're splitting this team, so
yeah,
it's only half of Burchard's share.
That's true.
Let's just see if there's anyone else.
It's just we went into. I mean, Taj and Ali are the classics. I think we put so
The
much
vibe.
time into Brichard. It would personally, if I was like the third party, like watching the whole stream, and they're just like, no, let's not take Brichard.
Talk for 20 minutes about Brashard Smith and just let him go undrafted. Yeah, great advice, everybody.
Yeah. So I
Really
feel like
actionable.
we memed ourselves into that one. I would be totally fine with Brooks in that spot. And the one thing that worries me about Brooks a little, relatively speaking, obviously the draft capital, and I'm not worried about Chase Brown because he's just 30. It's obscene. But we also have Samaje Perine, who did play a meaningful role when they were in the Super Bowl. He was fourth in receiving EPA with the Chiefs last year among running backs. So, and he's not an amazing rusher per se, but those are still snaps that Taj could potentially get that he's probably not going to wrestle away the receiving role from Samaje Perine would be hard. I think the rushing or injuries for Chase Brown, he could take that and have that upside, but receiving's a pretty sticky skill at the running back position. So that's something that was concerning me, but it's just a harder Chase Brown fade because they didn't have a receiving back on the roster. He was getting, I saw 85% of the snaps after week 10 last year, which is just not going to repeat. With
It's
you bring in
unsustainable.
Pirine
Not
to
Christian McCaffrey.
yeah Brian.
You're not McCaffrey.
That's even more
God.
triggering. Like that, like I was like stuffing him down harder, and you just like put the knee on the suitcase, like and zip up the suitcase on Chase Brown, like
He
so.
refused to die.
Oh,
In
Tontavian
fact,
Wicks went at least.
Darn it. I know
Is there
you're
anyone else here? Cooper, is Cooper taken or?
He's still kicking around behind Tutu Atwell and
Oh
that
my!
AD Mitchell.
Oh, this is ridiculous.
Slayton is, at this point, I am willing to consider Slayton above Cooper just to get my post draft Slayton up, but he goes because he's also kind of like locked into that wide receiver 2 role there.
We
That
don't.
Gabe Davis.
Yeah, I don't see them taking them.
I mean,
Getting another receiver.
That fake Gabe Davis story got me. I'm not gonna even lie.
Oh,
to you.
really?
Did you see that? Yeah,
It's actually a good fit though, like because they so many times they follow a former coach. It made too much sense because if you said like Gabe Davis is going to the Lions, why?
right.
But reunited with his coach is totally spot on.
It's such a Giants move. There goes Amari. And the other thing was, it was Adam Chef Wundler, and a one looks a lot
I've had
like
those
an
in the
L.
past. I've had those in the past.
A one looks a lot like an L at like 9 a.m, and you haven't had any coffee yet. So
yeah, it's fair. And I was looking at the monitor versus the phone, so that it's a little more deceiving.
Xavier Restrepo. I'm just seeing if there's. I can't do Booty right now, and I was in on him pre-draft, but I just can't. It's just too.
Wait, there's someone you just scrolled over that's pretty good at football. Mr. Sir Parker Washington.
Crash out. You get Frank Darby or you get nothing. No.
Frank Darby. Yeah, let's get. Why is Mike Will low-key appealing? Like, if there's one team that could resurrect him, but that's the only bad spot I think for Keenan because Ladd is Keenan. It's like Keenan. So then they're kind of fighting each other. But you could
lock in. Who did we? Let's not do Diami or Parker because they're both getting cucked by the 2 alphas. They're the Sigmas.
Yeah. There's just and the Jags line.
You want to do Restrepo or Felton?
I would go Restrepo. I would go Restrepo, but
just for a little rookie vibe. We don't really. Everyone here is terrible.
They picked number 1. That's another thing is in that scenario he could win out in the room because beyond Calvin Ridley, who's awesome. It's Tyler Lockett is a veteran, but we don't know. The wheels could fall off.
Objectively, I will come clean, and we're going to admit that was a pick for the bit. We didn't really believe that Xavier Restrepo was the best pick on the board, and we don't invite some people at home to take him. But if this does
Reed.
work out, if this does work out, we look really smart later. But
Yeah.
objectively, Amari Cooper goes there.
Just clip it like 2 clips. One side, yeah, Restrepo's a little overrated. He's undrafted. It's a questionable take. Pause.
Pause.
Restrepo's going to be amazing. He's has a connection with Cam Ward. He's going to take over. This is an absolute smash at the last round. And then you have the 2
Have to
clips
do
that
it.
are short, and you clip both sides. You play both sides, and then the stream will magically disappear. Or you just edit it out. They use deceptive editing to hurt people. Why not help people? Let's deceptive edit on our behalf for the bit.
Exactly. I totally agree. I'm labeling this as a stream with you, so we remember. Let's go to the draft board, see what we ended up with.
I'm pretty happy with it because sometimes you get nervous taking the three stud running backs. It makes sense. It's just not you're just not told that very often.
But
you don't
if
see
it
it very
hits,
often, but I felt like it worked out. I think receivers a little deeper, but that's my first impression.
it's one of those things where you're taking the gamble and it's like, man, I really hope some wide receivers I like fall to us. And I think they did. We end up with Drake May and Jared Goff as our quarterbacks, which I think is totally fine. It's like a perfect amount of quarterback investment, like not too much. But we get like 2 guys who could like ping pong 23, 24-point weeks. One's more of a rusher, one's a pocket passer, and arguably the best offense in the league. We'll take that. Saquon Barkley, JT, Bucky, Garendo, and Brashard Smith. So the story is you've got 3 alphas that carry you to the advance to the week 15. And it's a year where CMC gets banged up for 4 or 5 weeks again. And you get a monster month from Garendo. And, once bye weeks start hitting, Brashard Smith is catching passes. You don't even need him to go crazy. Just get some like 8-point weeks, some Justice Hill ass production with more upside than a Justice Hill.
Yeah, that's a great comparison for him. And because you have 3 elite guys, one can have a tough game. They have a tough matchup and they just don't produce well. Bye weeks, obviously. So having the 3, it is interesting, and just filling the rest with receivers, because I know historically there's a trend of picking two out of the first 6 being running back, but doing something a little more aggressively as the league moves towards really prioritizing an elite class of running backs, because not every running back is worth it, but there's an elite class that's getting at the eyes of the NFL. So whether Bucky is part of that in his second year, JT has done it before, but he's had injury up and downs, but he has the talent. He's been the number 1 overall back before. So you feel pretty good about that.
I mean, you go into week 1 and this team is projecting as one of the top 2 teams for sure, like in a projection. And man, if you just get the right spike weeks at the right time, no one in your pod is going to be able to catch you. And maybe you're going to have a unique combination in every pod you're in. And, you start hitting like week 16 last year. I was hitting some like absolutely injury riddled pods and pods that just had like not no live running backs, but like maybe 2 left. And if it's like our Saquon, T, and Bucky, we just got lucky versus like their Kamara and Brian Robinson, it's like they don't even stand a chance. Like even if they get like the 20-point Tajay Spears game, they still have to make up the Saquon and the JT. So I feel really good about that, assuming you're just saying, okay, we got to get these receivers to hit. But in past years, Devontae Smith has been like the 20th pick overall 2 years ago, and like 30. Like Devontae at 46 is a value. I feel like there's like too much of a discount on passing weapons in Philly, especially if like AJ Brown gets dinged up as he is known to. Then we get JMO betting on the breakout. That's kind of like our leverage bet. Like, okay, we're saying JMO is going to perform like a round 2 guy this year, round 3 guy. Diggs, Pearsall, Downs, Bateman, Keenan Allen, Restrepo is a fun little rookie. But
Yeah.
our core seven, the story you tell, JMO's the alpha, Devontae is going to get his big spike weeks. Diggs has like that adult. He's just the adult in the room getting his like responsible 7.5, 8 targets a game from Drake May. Double stacked with Hunter Henry. Pearsall he's a first round wide receiver in a really good offense, takes that year 2 leap. Downs, good for a bunch of 16-point games. Bateman's good for a couple 20 burgers. Keenan Allen, he sets a high floor. I mean, I like the texture of this room of the spikes and the floor guys.
Yep, you're taking bets on the quarterbacks, which we do have stacked. Drake May as a passer, if he progresses and develops, and with having a better team around him, with having Diggs as the lead receiver, because we haven't really seen Drake May with a real room. Booty is a nice, interesting guy to have, but if him and Demario Douglas are your two top guys in a rebuilding team, and a new coaching staff too, and Mike Vrabel, you don't know what you're getting. So we haven't really seen that. So you're betting on the development of that. You're betting on Jared being able to produce outside of Ben Johnson, and also whether Amon-Ra's full role as the alpha in the offense is more scheme dependent, because there's such a heavy emphasis on the slot in the Ben Johnson offense. Now, he's a very good receiver, but in a different system, JMO could easily be that guy. Now, we're not drafting them like that. Amon-Ra is a first round pick, but you're betting on that.
Right. You're saying, in this particular simulation, they're both 1,200-yard receivers, which is plausible. You could get like multiple JMO like 150 burgers, like yardage wise this year. That would not surprise anyone. And then tight end actually ended up decent for punting it off a bit. The Njoku faller, just a great talent bet. Hunter Henry for those Drake May spike weeks, and Mason Taylor is the fun rookie bet. This team is really it's an interesting one, but I think it tells a story that makes sense.
Also, last year, I'm looking, the Patriots had the second worst pass blocking line per PFF last year, and Mike Clay has them around tied for in the 19 to 25 range. So if they get even a slight bit of improvement on the offensive line, that's going to be huge for Diggs, because he has time to get open. Henry as well. So all of these little changes, because often last year's performance is based on these different contexts. So it goes for that. Bateman is in an excellent offense. We'll see what happens in Indianapolis. I would have loved Richardson, but no team is going to be perfect.
Yeah, this team, I was thinking, do we either go 3 quarterbacks or 3 tight ends? It would have been a little, I guess the Restrepo pick, we probably could have gone third quarterback because he might as well be a 0. But I do think
I guess Star maybe might have been the right guy. Definitely not Tyler Shuck. Ew. It ruins the aura of the team, even if he plays.
Joe Flacco with the team. Joe Flacco with Njoku, and just hope he gets some spike weeks in like the 7 games he starts.
I mean, that's like a crash out stack that sometimes you go to because there is a degree of randomness, and Joe Flacco has done it before. If you had him, Amari Cooper, and Njoku a couple of years ago, that
was printing.
Printing. Yeah, I've been saying wheels up too much. I didn't want to say it again. So printing is the exact word.
You could call it generational wealth when what we're talking about is getting your like $5 entry back. Oh, that's generational wealth, dude.
Easily. Yeah, you use just like they overuse generational talent, we'll overuse generational wealth. So
yeah, generational wealth is when you get like Joe Flacco to hit as an 18th round pick, but you still lose money somehow in best ball. Generational wealth, but we're not going to lose money on this team.
That's the game. This year we're manifesting positive vibes over here. That's why you have Restrepo personality pick, but really probably could have slapped a dart or Flacco at the end for structure. There is some training camp hype around Restrepo, but he is undrafted. It's just hard.
Yeah,
That's the
it's
worry.
definitely going to be a low owned pick for the puppy. I like doing Restrepo and the puppy one because there's going to be a bunch of these puppies over the course of the summer, and this thing's filling fast. I think we're at like 40% fill. Not
Wow.
a lot of people are going to have Restrepo, but like if you get good Restrepo vibes later in the summer, people in BBM can catch up, whereas you didn't need to take that risk. But it's like the puppy's going to close in May, so if you want,
Oh, the see
you might be like one of the few teams with him.
these are key little nuances that people aren't
Game theory
as
shit.
yeah hardcore in it. You lose these details, and that's how you get edges when you're drafting early, or if you hit the schedule right. Because in BBM, you get the whole summer to catch up, but this is just a pocket of essentially probably we think a May summer.
It's like
So
Puka Nakua 2 years ago was going in almost every draft by late August, which is a large percentage of the BBM pod. It still wasn't even like half the teams, but it was like he ended up being
enough.
on like a decent. But like taking Puka and May and that puppy, which like some people I had a May team 2 years ago that had Puka on it. It's like that matters a lot more in these time boxed contests, So hey, maybe Restrepo. Do not get me on the record saying he's Puka, but just like a
No, no,
fun
no, no.
advanced rate piece who ends up
Only in my dreams. But no, that's
where he's just better than most of the round 18 receivers, maybe in this version of the simulation,
yeah.
and gives you a couple weeks as
A
Cam
lot of
Ward's guy.
receptions. Yeah, really, Cam Ward's guy. I'm
So
just surprised he didn't get drafted, but that you'll have to take that into consideration
would
when
you would you have drafted him after he ran a 6.25 40-yard dash?
it wasn't
Some are
like
saying.
4.9 or something, like some
I think it
tight
was
end D
like
high end D
4.83.
tackle numbers.
It's like a
I would have
4.83, I
taken
believe.
5, 6, 7. It's sometimes the player, the play speed. Cam Ward relied on him a lot, and Arroyo was a great prospect in terms of the athleticism and such. But if you really watch the Miami games, that's who he relied on, no matter what. And they're running pretty difficult stuff. So just there were receivers that aren't even making this board. I think there was a guy who went before Restrepo round 7. He had like 500 yards at Colorado in his peak season or something. Maybe I'm thinking of someone else, but there were some who type of picks, and even at like that NFL level, like sometimes even the teams are like, who is this guy? Like there's some because at some point you're setting a board. If you have 200 guys and 30 of 35 of them are undrafted, there's no point. If you don't like them, you don't bother. So that's something. Sometimes even you see at night, you're just like, what in the world? Who is that? And you gotta with the old
And what
Google, or some guy scouted them 5 years ago in high school, and he had like 50 yards. But geez.
Yeah, there were some interesting. You had Tez Johnson getting drafted. I mean, how did Tez Johnson get drafted? He was like, wasn't he like 155 pounds, running like
He's
a
small, but
relatively slow time?
yeah. Yeah, he's fast in college, but he was constantly hurt, obviously. And but there are some worse than him. At least college football fans knew that name. Not that he's really built to be an NFL prospect, but at least he's recognizable. But there are some.
So you had Tommy Millott, sixth round wide receiver from Montana State, and then you had Junior Bergen, seventh round receiver from Montana. So you had Montana State and Montana getting a receiver drafted over Restrepo. That's a tough scene.
We need to have Conor McGregor on the draft broadcast, like the day 3, and just so we can say who the fook is that every time we don't know someone, because like who the fook is that?
Yeah, get him crashing out on Mel Kiper's crash out and just have him have a crash out off and see how it goes. I think that would be pretty good TV.
It's incredible.
Yeah, Mel
Oh,
Kiper
so
was in rare form in this year's draft for sure.
Okay, so LeJohntay Wester did go to Colorado, but he had 900 yards, so that's respectable. But a pretty open offense, but no one. Shador was covered so much, and they only talked about Travis Hunter, so that says a lot. But he was a fifth
Dominic,
year se- he was a
sorry,
fifth
go
year
ahead.
he was a fifth year senior. Went to Colorado, and he got drafted, I believe, 7th round.
Hmm.
So LeJohntay Wester.
Who's Dominic Lovin from Georgia? He went.
I know of him, but I know him from watching Georgia, but nothing doesn't doesn't stand out. He's just kind of a guy, but it was a good team. But
We'll have to
him
lock in with
specifically,
Jack on that one.
yeah, honestly, you watch him. He did play for Georgia, but he was not the focal point at any point in his career. In the passing game, post Bowers was rough.
I think
Uh, his, his,
they had
his
Aeneas. What was his name? Who
there
was
was
the Jets
it's
receiver that they took?
Arian Smith. You mean?
Arian Smith. Yeah. So that's the Georgia receiver I had heard of. Had not heard of Lovett, but
Lovett
Arian Smith.
plays, but like he wasn't anybody that he wasn't anyone that was breaking the doors off of. See what his best
Did
his
you
high season as a sophomore in Missouri, 846.
did you see
613, 607 at Georgia, which
Arian
is
Smith actually got some glaze this week?
yeah, I heard his name. I didn't know what the reason was, and I'm like, huh, like that guy from Georgia, like
They were basically just saying that, the speed is apparent, which we all knew, but that he seems to have taken real strides with like catching the ball, which like yeah, you would hope that for an NFL receiver, but fourth round draft capital is like it's not
is that
like
where he
a
went 4th round? I thought it
he
was
went fourth
later.
round for a team that doesn't have a wide receiver too. Arian Smith is a name, and no one's taking him in any draft. That's a name I'm tucking away just because I don't really believe in the talent. But if they're saying good things and they keep saying good things and they don't add anyone, Arian Smith, round
That
18
is a
click.
vacant room. That's fair. That it is a vacant room because that's kind of that's my copium angle for Restrepo is who does Tennessee have now that Io Manor versus Travis Hunter game will probably be thrown on us for the rest of humanity, but my money is on that Io Manor is going to be showing that Travis Hunter game to his like kids and grandkids, and that's going to be about it. But I hope he proves me wrong. Yeah, I'm not one of those like
And they kind of
hate
they kind
on
of win in
guys, but
different ways. Like they could both play in three wide receiver sets. I think if Tyler Lockett is total dust, Io Minor's more like that
possible.
X receiver, like the blocker. Can't Restrepo play like out of the slot a little bit?
That's where he's probably best fit. He's
So
you're hoping he hits the Edelman Welker slot guy who didn't test well, but with he has a special connection with a very good quarterback who can find ways to get him involved. That's really the angle for him because he's too small to be on that outside like heavy outside. He did do it in Miami a decent amount, but the slot is really his upside play. Although I don't want it to be another Kyle Phillips where Kyle showed flashes at UCLA and I think he had a nice game or two as a pro, and then he kind of just was more of a returner specialist guy, and we didn't hear from him. But I think that's the best. That's the best angle, and Ridley is comfortable at the X position, so he's not really gonna fight for that alignment or those targets. Let's see
no,
if I can.
I think you could tell a story where both those guys have roles and where Restrepo can get a couple weeks for sure. So, did you have any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Pretty happy with this team. Fade Chase Brown at all costs, and
Unless
Looking
the
forward to the
cost is like
schedule release.
unless the cost is like fifth, sixth round, and then maybe I'll think about it. But at
It's
this cost and a bunch of the costs behind it, fade it.
for me. It starts with a 6. I think Travis Etienne went like what, second, third round last year or something. It was a big number.
The glaze was real.
Guys can fall off, and he was good in college. He was a lot better in college than Chase Brown was, and he was a first round pick. So,
And there is something to be said about, Chase Brown did get hurt at the end of last year, and people were like, oh, that doesn't really matter. Well, if they didn't plan on giving a guy a bunch of touches, and then they give him a bunch of touches, and he gets a little banged up, maybe they say, hey, let's like scale him back to like a reasonable amount of Chase Brown touches. No one's saying he won't ever play, but why doesn't Chase Brown just get an amount of touches that Chase Brown deserves? Because he's Chase Brown, which is like whatever
30th,
running back.
was it 30th overall, something like that?
For Chase Brown this year?
Chase,
Yeah. It's obscene.
Sometimes it's so obvious.
Fade Chase Brown at this cost and a bunch of the ones behind it. But all right, everyone. Hope you had fun tuning in. Hope you learned something. Maybe you just watched the first running back start to win a puppy in some time, I would imagine. So from Shawn, from me, thanks for tuning in. Have a good one. Peace.
All right. Peace.